All right, all right. I think we're almost ready for Boone. He's come all the way from Boston. He's escaped the frozen wastes and joined us here in another frozen waste. That's pretty good,
One
I
frozen
guess.
waste to another. I love it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I'll let him get started. This rack and pinion raconteur is going to do his thing.
Oh, hi. Oh, give me something else. Give me, all right. Can you hear me in the back? Everyone hear me? If you can hear me, say monkey. He said monkey. So, I have a couple of things to talk about before I really get started. Let me make sure I work this thing first. Oh, a little bit about who I am. You've probably seen me on the Twitters. There's a lot of stuff that I do there. It's probably my best medium. The rest of my work I'm not a big fan of. A disclaimer. I don't know anything about happiness. I am a Puritan Irish Catholic Bostonian. I was raised with the idea of someone, somewhere, is having a good time, and it is my job to put a stop to it. The Know About Happiness is a favorite Public Image Limit album, and as I was listening to Jill, there was so much amazing stuff going on that I actually have a book recommendation. I very rarely have book recommendations because I buy books and I don't finish them. But I fell in love with this book. When you talk about happiness, I usually talk about grumpiness. And when I think about happiness, I read something by this woman, Julie Norham. Wow, that scales really badly. Called The Positive Power of Negative Thinking. And that for pessimists like me, and maybe a few of you in the audience, I know there's two or yeah, right. Only the hand halfway up, right? There's hope for us as well. Pessimism and happiness don't have to go, they're not natural enemies in the wild, not like developers and designers or something like that. I would like to talk about the story so far today. Holy crap, this has been amazing. I want to give a big shout out to Stanley, who has been transcribing everything that people have been talking. That is freaking amazing. I can't even imagine. Stanley is fantastic, and the fact that he's typing this, he can say, I rule, I'm the guy that brings this all together. I can make you sound like a hero, or I can make you sound like an idiot. But I'm Stanley, I'm the man in charge. Thank you to everyone for being here, staying out while it snows outside. Thank you to the organizers, the folks who have put this together, and everyone else who's had a hand in World IA Day. Thank you to our security guards in the back, keeping things safe. Events like this only happen with unsung heroes. I want to make sure I sing their praises before I do anything else. One of the great things about what's happening today is World IA Day. IA is changing in so many ways. The definition and the discussions around it change so much. My favorite change or recent update is an article that Lou Rosenfeld published on Medium, where he referred to everyday IA. IA isn't necessarily a special thing anymore because, as Abby has told us time and again, we live and swim in worlds of information. And how do you make sense of this mess? How do you understand what's going on? And part of Lou's point was that information architecture isn't something so unique anymore. We all have to work with it. We all need to get better at it. So it's changed IA in a way that I think I wasn't ready for years ago and am still coping with today. The major change is, look at this. I did a search for information architecture. God, I love this screen. This is amazing. And I did a search for information architecture. What I love is, well, of course, we got the polar bear books. And again, this just doesn't scale very well, but look what's down here at number 3. But I'll bring the number out for you. Over 28,000 results for information architecture. Holy freaking. What we do and the things that we work with has changed so much. The scale has been incredible. IA has scaled to match every challenge. And what we do as designers, developers, writers, theorists, teachers has scaled with it. But this is the part that I love the most. It's really freaking me out because it cuts out sometimes and I don't know if I should repeat myself. It's sort of like the worst nightmares, like you give a talk and the microphone cuts out. But I'd like to start the meat of my talk today, with a lie. If some follow me on Twitter, you will have seen an early draft of the talk I did using a tool called BoardThing. And I love BoardThing because it helps me build out talks and plans. And half the stuff I put on here just didn't fit. I got caught in so many loops because all the things I wanted to talk about were overwhelming me. And the only thing I really could pull out of that was Milhouse, who is the only Simpsons character I believe has ever really put together a great visualization in the history of the show. Milhouse knows how to affinity map people. I think Milhouse is it's not Lisa, it's Milhouse. Another lie. I'm actually here today to talk about email and meeting etiquette. And there's a soft spot right under my foot. Let's say a year ago, let's say in a time and a place, I was involved in a meeting with plenty of people. You know those meetings where you have executives, the executives, the head of design, a few people underneath that person, developer, a marketer. Actually, I think there's even a few people from catering in the room. I don't understand how they get there. And you're working out a plan for what you're going to do with your next big project. And then at some point in time, all the planning comes to a stop when someone says, you know, I'm not sure I agree with what we're doing. I'm not entirely sure with where we're going. Boon, which is good because I was in the room, why don't you tell us why we're doing this? And I said, well, the research plan we put in place takes a lot of standard goals and standard ideas into account. We're testing some variables that we believe are meaningful. We're not going to waste our time testing stuff that we already know or going after obscure indicators. And we all sort of nodded our heads and the meeting ended. And we all left saying goodbye to the catering people. And a little while later, an email thread starts. You know, the email thread that starts after you have the meeting where everyone says, oh, yeah, we're cool. And then at 5:01, the email comes, you know, I'm not entirely cool with what we were talking about. You know, the person who waits until everyone else is out of the office so they can get that one email through? Love those people. And so suddenly an email chain began. Why? What are the goals here? What was the point of this research? What are the things we're working on? How do we understand? Like, I'm going to need to understand this a little better. What are the rules behind this? And I said, wow, okay, that's an interesting point. You know, what are the rationales? I haven't really done a make the case document for a while. Let me sit down and go pull some research. You know, I've got a Giga account. I've read some Forrester books. I have a bed, and I have a Rosenfeld stack on the other side of my bed. And I totally lost the microphone there too. Started to make the we were going forward, and I'm going to fiddle with it. As we started working on it, everything seemed to work pretty well. Here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. But as I was reading it, I could almost perfectly make the diametrically opposed approach. What I had learned years ago about how to plan for IA, how to do research, how to do things, the things that made up the base of my knowledge had all recently become topics of discussion, and people had claimed the exact opposite. And there was a body of knowledge out there that anyone could draw from to come to the meeting and say, Boon, I love what you're doing, but I've got 3 really good papers written here and a methodology that says you're wrong. And I went back to the meeting and to the group and said, I've picked a decision. I picked a, you're right. We should make it as a group. Here is the research, and here are very good reasons to do it one way. Here are very good reasons to do it completely the opposite. It's not necessarily my decision. We should come to that decision as a group. And suddenly that unleashed a torrent of stuff. Well, don't you people have rules for information? Don't you have rules? Don't you have something to say what the right thing is? This is the fascinating subtext. It's not so much the right thing to do as it is, well, something told us to do it, so that makes us the right thing. You know, that idea of best practices. I have never necessarily worked with a best practice that made sense. I have adjusted out of them. I have rewritten them. But I've never really found one that was perfect. So on a very long weekend, with a very large bottle of gin, I had something of a Zen moment. I'm a terrible Zen student. I was actually kicked out of a Zen center because my mind was too loud. I was distracting the students around me. That was a really bad year. But it was great for lots of other reasons. And I had to step back from some of the problems and think about, a few questions. What do I know? I mean, really deep stuff, right? But I built this body of knowledge over the years, what I understood about IA, what I understood about design, technology. What do I know? How do I know what I know? I have some books, I have some articles, I have some scribbled notes on the backs of napkins that seem really insightful at the time. How much of that am I comfortable with? This is a big one for me. How much information and knowledge you have that you're comfortable with? And then what do I need to rethink? At some point in time, we all have to take a moment and say, something's changed. Maybe years have gone by, maybe a new book has come out, maybe you're getting a new gig, maybe you're in between projects, maybe you just happened to walk past the bookcase to refill your gin and tonic and went, a lot of these are 5 to 10 years old. I wonder if there's some new books on these topics. I'm going to start digging out them. Let alone Twitter, everyone is smarter than everyone else and posting all sorts of updates to everything you knew about this is wrong. And you should follow me to find out why. So all of this turned into something that I like to say, I started to sit down and think, I drew 3 columns. What are the things that I'm still comfortable with? The rules. If someone says, how do we do this? I had information or I had something that said, there's a rule for this. I'm comfortable with this. What do I have a hunch about? No, I won't do that. What do I have a really informed idea about that? I'm not some, I don't think we need to take that to testing. I wouldn't need to go ahead and put that into a program. We can make a decision about that. And then what are coin flips? Things that I don't understand enough of, things that I need to learn more about, the things that I think I might be right. And unfortunately, the coin flip list was really long. It was 2 pages. The rules was 4 lines, and the hunches was only 20 lines. It was depressing. But I started to think of the information and all of the stuff we deal with is how do you take a mental inventory and plan for all the information you have? When do you take a moment and say, I've got some time, let me think about what I'm going to do, how am I going to tackle this next project, how am I going to tackle the next gig, what am I going to do with my life, right? This is deep, deep stuff, but you can pull it up and have fun with it. My favorite response is when I asked about rules, hunches, or coin flips, my friend Ryan Friedis said, oh, simple, that's heuristic, data, or genius design. And I said, that's pretty close. That's really good. It's a great way to think about it. It's a little weird because he's out in San Francisco, so genius design has a very different weight to it than I think on the East Coast. It's like one of those East Coast, West Coast things, right? So white. But it got me thinking again about, how do you come to sense of your own information, the stuff that's floating around in your head, the stuff that's in your bookcase. What are your rules? What are your hunches? What are your coin flips? What are your trusted sources? What's your stash of trusted sources? If you go home later on tonight and you think to yourself, so I do what I do, and I do it damn well, because you're a fantastic audience of incredibly smart and incredibly attractive people. But how do you sit there and say, if you were going to mentor someone, what would you give them for information to learn from? What's the body of knowledge you'd use to say how you become the next kick-ass my company? Here's how you become the next person that's going to change what we do. What do you give them? And I found it to be a very, very useful exercise and learn some stuff that frightened the hell out of me. Stanley, you can say scared the out of me. I'm sorry, I'm breaking the 4th wall all the time with him. It's too much fun. And as I was doing it, my better half, my wife Carolyn, said, I dig what you're doing. You've been making lists, you've been pulling books out of the woodwork, you've been doing a lot of really heavy drinking, and I totally support it, but why? And when I sat down and built a rationale for it, I said, I can sum up the reason I think this is doing, and the reason that this is something that we can all benefit from. 2 words. How many times have you seen a conversation on Twitter? Do a search on Twitter right now for citation, please, and look at the level of is on the page. It used to be, hey, that's cool. Where did you learn that? And now it's become, I don't believe a word you said. I'm sorry, I'm totally pointing at you. I don't believe a word you said. I want to see the citation. We have built up this huge body of knowledge, but we have not done as good a job as saying which is the valid, which has aged out. You know, knowledge is fantastic. It's additive. The more you put in, the more you get the benefit of it. But I'm scared that as time goes on, you know, it can be a bit of a problem. It gets top heavy. When do you play Jenga with what you know? Pull a few things at the bottom. Does it all come back? Does it all come down, or do you still stay there? When it was kind of an interesting challenge that I started playing a game with Carl called Rules Not Rules. We started looking around all over the place for there's a new favorite phrase, UX myths. What are myths about our industry? What are things that people believe that are wrong? You know, it's not as cool as Mythbusters. We don't have people in really cool hats blowing stuff up. But spend a little time on Twitter, and it starts to get like the Family Feud, right? And it's like, I want to see, we asked 100 people, best way to go from idea to prototyping, 14 answers on the board, show me. Yeah. So this is what I'm dealing with. I had someone come up to me, so I want to be a UX specialist. I said, that's great. I want to make you better at that. And they said, but I just read something that says UX isn't anyone's specialist. It's not a job, it's everyone's job. There's no such thing as a UX specialist. I shouldn't try to be a UX specialist. And I said, okay, that's probably not the way to approach it, but let's go on. One of my new favorites, mobile first. Yahoo just discovered mobile first, right? Luke Grabluski is doing a bit of a dance going, oh, you're only 7 years late, whatever. But at the same time, you can find plenty of people saying there's no such thing as mobile. You should be designing responsive containers that fit to anything. So which do you pick? It's wrong to guess, except when you value constraints. How many times have you worked on a project and you say, all right, we really should nail all this? And they go, no, 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 no. We have a constraint. Usually the budget. Usually we only have a little bit of time to do it. But then later on they'll go, oh, we should have researched that more. It's like, no, we had a constraint. One of my favorites. Plan like each release is your last. Unless, or except when, iteration and flexibility, and there's no such thing as a release. You should do rolling releases. Another favorite of mine. Prototypes rule, except when anything but production code is an absolute waste of time. This is a big one that's coming up time and again. Paper prototyping was a bit of a flame war, which is cool because paper is flammable. But there was this whole idea of why would you do this? Why would you do all these prototypes in paper? Why would you spend time if you're not building production level code, right? And we bring all these wonderful biases to it. There are people who live in code. And so for them, anything that's not production code is a waste of their time. Meanwhile, you've got people on your team that don't really touch code. They need to get a business idea out. They need to get a goal satisfied. So you give them pencil and paper. You let them have fun. You can make this case either way. It kind of blows my mind. This is my favorite. Information needs organizing, except when imposing structure is a crime. Information wants to be free, man. Remember when folksonomies were everywhere? Like, no structure. It'll be a folksonomy. People will just tag everything. People will tell us what our content is. Yeah, how'd that work out? We don't talk about that as much, do we? For the longest time, folksonomies were everywhere. And then suddenly, we all just closed. We turned the page and said, yeah, we don't talk about those days. You know? It's like talking about that album and artist. It's like, we don't talk about Lou Reed's Metal Machine music. Except there's one person going, there's one person who goes, no, man, folksonomies are totally it. We're totally a hit in the day. You people just got too cool for them. And this is another big favorite of mine. Patterns support design. They help you. Patterns get you from blank page into working, into structures. We just saw a beautiful pattern library from our friends at Goldman. Here's a pattern library for everything you're going to do. And then I should probably find the tweet. I probably should have put up here. Alan Cooper says, if it's a template, it's a piece of crap. But which is it? And again, everyone in a room can make a decision and we can talk it through. But when we're not in the room, what happens? What happens when a team member says, oh, if Alan Cooper said it, it's gospel? Which is a frightening thought on so many levels. We'll step away from that. But that idea of there's so much out there refuting itself, right? The snake eating its own tail. Every major point you can make, there's someone making the other side of it. And at the end, my favorite was people want your expertise. They're paying you good money because you are really smart at what you do. You have built hundreds of cool things. You have led people through the wasteland of design and brought them to the promised land of ROI. Except if you'd hear some folks talk about it, no, man, it's your beginner's mind. You come in open to everything, and only then will you find the answer. I don't kid. I actually had a great chat with a client once who said, I'm looking for a design team who is going to come to us with a beginner's mind. So of course the first response I had was, dude, you are awesome. I want to hang out with you. I want to understand how you do it. But they really did. They wanted people who had no knowledge of their industry. They wanted people that had no preconceived notions. They also didn't want to pay for the fact that they didn't have those. You don't know anything about our industry. We should be able to get 50% off your rates, right? And I went, do you want a beginner's mind or do you want a junior rate? There's a subtle but important difference. So who decides? Who gets to make the call on this? We're all part of the problem. We're all part of the solution, right? I say we're all part of the problem. I'm not laying blame. I'm like, we're all in this together, man. But when we're at work and when we're partnering with people, we don't always have the time to do that research, to pull that information out, right? Years ago, when I worked for a very large agency that could afford Forrester, I subscribed to every Forrester email I could. I got every Forrester report because I knew my client was going to reference it within 48 hours of it coming out. I just wanted to be ahead of the curve. It's like, so, I'm thinking that we're going to go for a responsive design. Tell me more, I'm interested. And then I'd ask a question specifically from the report and then answer it just as the report answered it and went, I got it. Okay, I'm with you, I'm with you. So in the absence of Richard Dawson, I'm sorry, there is no Family Feud without Richard Dawson. I don't mind showing my age. I don't mind being a grump. There are things I can handle in this life, but Steve Harvey, it's a different show. Louis Anderson, it was not Family Feud. I spent more time with this man than my grandparents when I was growing up. Without active conversation, without taking the time to dig through our own knowledge, to dig through what we do, throw some stuff out, and it's okay. It's okay to say, you know what, this was cool 5 years ago. It doesn't match anymore. Context keeps changing, right? We're on the cusp of, actually the book is out already. There's a great book on context out right now. Andrew Hinton. I always get Andrew Hinton and Andrew Heaton mixed up, but Andrew Hinton has a great book out on context. Please, God, tell me I'm right. I'm right, okay. Andrew Heaton has a good book too. But Andrew Hinton, we're recognizing context driving so many things. I mean, sadly, if there is a legacy to information architecture and UX, it is the answer, it depends, right? How many times was it always, should we do this? Well, you're gonna hate me, but it depends. And then you begin the research, then you begin the planning, then you begin how things go on. So my charge to you, to all you wonderful people on the internet watching on the live stream, I know you're out. Hi, Mom. I told my folks I was live streaming and she's really never seen me on stage before, so it's like, I can do this, look. I'm not saying be Richard Dawson, because no one can be Richard Dawson. But try to be that person who pulls out a little more of the information and said, let me figure out what this, let me take some time to figure this out. Because with all of the new books, with all of the great tweets, because there are some wonderful people tweeting out there, it adds value, sure, no problem, it adds value. How do you figure out what stuff to use? And as I spent some time a little while ago with someone, we were talking about big data, and he was a huge proponent of big data, saying that it's going to change everything. And I said, that's kind of cool, but I'm not as interested in big data. I'm interested in big knowledge. I'm interested in every new book that comes out. How does it feed into the pool? I'm interested in every crazy new article that comes out. How does it feed into the pool? How does someone pull it down and use it? All this stuff, all this amazing knowledge that's out there, how do we synthesize it and make it something? How does someone here talk to the next great person who wants to be mentored or learn the industry or become better, and you can point them in the right direction? How do we do this? Because I'm not scared of big data, but I'm scared to death that big knowledge is not leading to big wisdom. And my plea to everyone, take a little bit of time and think about what's the difference between the knowledge you have and how have you applied your experience and turned it into a little bit of big wisdom. A little bit of big wisdom. Sounds like a candy bar. Bit of honey. This is, at the core, what I spend my time thinking about, which tells you why I'm not into happiness. Why I spend a little more time with the genetic than I do, you know, a book by Eckhart Tolle. Power of Now! So, I don't like to do this very often, but I ask everyone here, just take some time somewhere down the line and ask yourself, what are your rules? What are your hunches? What are your coin flips? How do you know the things that you know? Is it time to brush up on something? Is it time to get rid of something? For a little while, I had a UX bookshelf and I had a one in, one out rule. And it was brutal. Every new book that came in, I had to let one go. And it drove me nuts for a while, but it's the only way I could stay sane. I could only keep 10 or 12 books in my head. I'm not smart. As my mom said, you're the funny one in the family, honey. Go with that. Hi, Mom. So, I will end, unfortunately, with one final lie, because anyone who knows what I'm about to say has seen this coming all along, and that is no matter what level of wisdom you have, no matter what amount of data you have in your head, no matter where you are, positive, negative, pessimist, someone looking for utopia, there's only one real truth out there, and that is that the cake is a lie. Thank you very much. Thank you. I went a little fast because I want to make sure people have a chance. I'm going to say it. I brought the snow. I did it. I brought the snow. I'll own it. Coming from Boston, where I was frozen to the core, the idea of going home in the snow depresses the hell out of me, so I want to make sure everyone can do the same and get home before snow builds up. But if someone has questions, comments, I have only one request. Please do not throw things. Please, please. This is a beautiful screen. I would hate to, my reflexes are terrible. It might miss me and hit the gentleman over there.
Do you think part of it comes down to the fact that students in our educational system aren't taught critical thinking as a default class?
Do I think part of the problem is that students in our educational system are not brought up with critical thinking? Critical thought. Taught. They are not taught critical thinking. That is something I have no competency speaking about. And then my wife and I have no children. I try to be the best uncle that I can, but they're still really young, so I'm the guy that gets to take them out, fill them full of sugar, and give them back to their parents. So I can't speak to that. I'm sorry. Anyone else? No. Guys,
My name's Gavin. I'm
Gavin.
wondering if there's room in this conversation for best practices. I teach at Pratt. I teach graphic design, so I'm more on the visual side. And I think right now, half of the content I teach in my class is relevant, and then half of it I'm teaching, and I regret teaching it because I feel like it's old. So I wonder, is there room right now for just a conversation for best practices?
So you teach an amazing course. You love it. Half the stuff you teach, you're fantastic with. You love it. The other half, you regret it because it's old and it might not speak to the challenge that they have. That, I think, is the curse of everyone who teaches. You know, I have taught classes before, smaller ones, but I've always said something that I don't know if this will hold up in a year or two, or it's based on something old. Is there room for best practices in this discussion? I'm going to be very cautious because I'm going to be slightly sarcastic when I say I don't want the word best practices involved at all. I hate it to death. It is a word that only has meaning to the business people that try to put the screws to you. And And I'm not trying to say that there are bad people out there, but best practices fills a hole when a discussion falters. You're stuck at we've got a big decision to make. Are we going to spend $500,000 to fix this search engine so that people can actually find things with metadata and tags? Or are we going to leave it all with full text indexing and we're not going to care? What's the best practice? Well, the best practice is you talk to your customers or the people using it, you find out what fits their needs and you build that, right? A best practice is the thing that suits. Oh, thank you. The best practice suits the need. So I shy away from the term best practices because it almost always means someone in the room wasn't exactly sure what they needed to ask, so they just asked for best practices. And if at all possible, he's like, great, let's talk about that. What do you think that means? What does best practices for search look like? Let's go look at some search engines. We can do this live. We can pull it up on the screen and do it right now. So that's how I look at it. Thank you, Gavin.
Any other questions?
I would like to say I'm amazed at the restraint here that people did just not totally wheelhouse the Stumptown iced coffee in there. I've watched that. I thought that would be the first thing to go, and everyone would just be sitting in the seats going,
So not so much a question as a thought. I am reminded of the earlier talk when we were talking about the dynamics of happiness, right? There was creativity in there, and there were kind of the sub-dynamics, the facets, if we want to call them that, like autonomy, right? And listening to you talk about this, the word uncertainty popped into my mind, and right, how we tend to be happier when things are more certain and clear. And I wonder if we just have to learn to be happier with uncertainty, or kind of bring our clients to be happier with uncertainty and that. So
part of the thought is, with all the earlier discussions about happiness and uncertainty, within this discussion, what does it mean to become more uncomfortable with uncertainty? To either be more personally comfortable with uncertainty, how you present it to your clients. Being comfortable with uncertainty is pretty much one of the tenets of living a happy life. Comfort with uncertainty is probably the only way I know not to have a heart attack. Also, not those donuts, because those donuts are amazing. I shouldn't speak about that, but without sounding all new agey, the challenge is when talking to clients, your partners, and I say clients as partners as well, when you talk about the people you work with, how do you overcome that uncertainty? Will you test it? Will you refine it? I mean, 9 times out of 10, when the best practices conversation starts up, it's because you don't know. And so the answer is, let's test it. Let's come up with the right stimuli. I love saying stimuli. Let's come up with the right stimuli to get an answer. And then let's all agree that this was are we good with this answer? Let's move on. So it's absolutely something that I try to flip into, I don't know, let's test the heck out of it. And that's how you overcome the uncertainty. Cool. All right, see one more in the back.
All right. Do bum bum bum.
No.
How you doing? Great talks. Everybody's talks were great today, and it's really resonated in my mind. I'm here at ADP, working with Carl. Carl's working on, they work on the new.
Ladies and gentlemen.
They're working on the new, right? They're working on the innovation, right? It's beautiful. We're here in the lab, right? I mean, this is great. But I'm on the other side. We're seeing, what they're doing. I'm sorry, and so we're in the reality of existing products and some new ones, right? So we're in that world. So it's come to me, I mean, so many of the talks are leading to this, information architecture, drawing, sketching, making, management understand, but also managing expectation. I think that's what, and you hit on a few things about, well, you got constraints. I heard so many laughters, a lot of laughter here about constraints, system constraints. We don't have the money to do this. So have you had, what's your experience with managing your clients' expectations about where they can go here and then, down the line, right?
It's a great question. When talking about this is part of why I started this small exercise, was because when it comes time to manage expectations with a client, what can I bring to bear to help shape the discussion? So when you have that best practices issue, you think this is old, how do I fix it? Is this the right thing to be showing or teaching? Around and saying, what's the research on it look like now? What's the point of view people are using now? I try to look at, that's why I said, what are your trusted sources? Where are the places you go to? Where are the voices that you think if you pull from them, it's been vetted, it's got something to it? managing expectations to me is almost always as much transparency as they can handle. To say, I don't know if this is the right idea. I've got really good pieces. I've got a great body of information that says one's a good idea. I've got 2, 3 options here. It all comes down to which you want to pick. And a lot of times it's, here's the price. We can do it, you know, I don't want to do that three legs of the stool thing, but for me, it's much of the reason picked up, right? When I generally, in my past lives at companies, I pummel people with PDFs and I give them research. I say, if you don't agree, that's okay. I'm totally happy to have a discussion about it if we've all read the same stuff and we're all bringing the same stuff to the table. And that's that managing expectations is almost transparency. So the mic is cutting in and out.
Mike's dying. I can see the battery pack light.
Yep. And Stanley's kicking ass, and I'm sure he's been having fun with it. So thank you all very much.
All right, there's a couple more things here at the end. We're almost to them. Don't. Well, I can do that next. Go back. I mean, what are you doing? I thought we were doing the giveaway first. Now you're confusing me. Why are you doing things out of order? Sorry. Hi, everybody. We're almost done. We have a book to give away. Abby Covert's book, How to Make Sense. I should know the title, but I have to look at it because I'm on stage. How to Make Sense of Any Mess. Who? Andy Simpson. He just left. Ah. Neural? No? What do we got next? Sarah Hackney? You win a book! Congratulations. Thank you very much. Give me the presentation back so I can